Through the Keyhole is fueled by Vanessa House Beer Company, located in Automobile Alley at 118 Northwest 8th Street in Oklahoma City. Stop by the tap room and try the legendary 401k lager or the refreshing Destination Wedding Cerveza with salt and lime. Vanessa House is always brewing something fun like the Pog Hard Seltzer or their sweet and tasty sours. Great beers for a hot Oklahoma summer as we march towards football season. Stop by the Vanessa House Tap Room at 118 Northwest 8th Street in Oklahoma City for good drinks and family-friendly good times. Kids and pets are welcome. Yes, I mentioned kids and pets in the same sentence. Vanessa House Beer Company, the best beer in Oklahoma City. Please drink responsibly.
It's caught. Hollywood! Lights! Camera! Action! Hollywood Brown! CD Lamb still running! Into corner! CD! For the TD!
People don't know what it is to be champions. Oklahoma invented it.
Hey, what's up, y'all? Alan Kenney, one of your co-hosts of Through the Keyhole, an Oklahoma Sooners fan podcast. We mainly talk football here, occasionally some other OU sports, and it's our free show this week, coming to you on a Tuesday night. And I want to start off first by, of course, thanking our sponsors here at Through the Keyhole, and really the big one, Vanessa House there in Oklahoma City. Get by, get some of your favorite brews there, and good chance to hang out, have a good time. Also rate, review, subscribe wherever it is you get your podcasts. And also, why don't you check out our website now? It's keyholepod.com. It's a free site. We'll be giving you, some free content there, free articles, analysis. But also you can use that site also to support our Patreon, which gives you access to even more articles, more podcast episodes, like the one that Payton Guthrie, one of my co-hosts, did with Matt Zemek last week, talking about the USC Trojans. Speaking of which, Payton, what's going on, man?
Oh, not much. Not much is going on, really. I was trying to think of something cool and exciting to do, but no, not much going on. Just the regular 9 to 5, keeping us on the grindstone. But yeah, that's about it, man. I enjoyed it, and then as you mentioned, the USC podcast was really good. You guys should listen to that. It's 2 podcasts in a row I had with external fans that's pretty much have both feet on the ground. So I had a Texas blogger on, now a USC blogger on. To both have a pretty good understanding of what it is, ball a little bit of a disagreement with maybe the softness of Lincoln Riley, but hey, what are you going to do? Can't get them all the way there. We can't convert everyone at once.
And Matt, give us the lay of the land there in Thundertown.
Dude, vibes were at an all-time low in that first half, and then the second, not even really the second half, just the last 6 minutes of game 4, the vibes were at an all-time high, man. But that's where I've been past couple weeks. Thunder duties kind of taken over a little bit, but man, it's awesome, man. It's just awesome to see the Thunder. I just love and miss. I really miss the highs and lows that you get through a series, and a really tightly contested series too, with the one with the Thunder and the Mavs, man. It's just a ton of fun to watch. I love the overreaction of you lose a game, you lose 2 games in a row. It's like, oh, well, this one's over. And then you go in and absolutely just steal one in Dallas that you really had no business winning. It's awesome, man. Vibes are good heading back for game 5.
Yeah, watching it, I thought that after game 3, I was sitting there thinking, man, Thunder really should have taken that one. And then watching game 4, I was like, holy moly, there's no way they should have gotten that one. So, but it's kind of funny to say this about a team that's the top seed there in the Western Conference, which is pretty loaded. But I mean, it felt like that was kind of like one of those true moments where the Thunder kind of arrived as a team, as a contender last night, because that was, you expect a young team in that kind of situation, as poorly as they were playing, to really fold. And I mean, they played so well down the stretch, man.
You had a little bit of everything. It's weird. They closed the game with 2 rookies and a second-year player in Jalen Williams. I mean, that's just, it's crazy, right? And Not only that, you had Chet, who, yes, rookie in quotes, whatever you want to call him. I mean, this is his first year actually playing. Payton gave me a little grimace there. Your boy Wimby won, Payton. He won rookie of the year.
I
It
guess
wasn't even
Chet is
close.
a rookie. You're right.
It wasn't even close.
It's not good enough. Yeah.
But no, so Chet hit a big three. He had a couple big free throws late
Yeah.
as well. And for a guy in his first year playing, first playoff, like real, like meaningful playoff series, the one against the Pelicans didn't really count. The Pelicans were just completely outmatched. But this one, I mean, a game of substance in a game where, Luka couldn't make a free throw. Like, I mean, all these guys on the Mavs couldn't make a free throw, and then Chet Holmgren steps up, knocks down two big ones there at the end. You had Cason Wallace playing great defense on Kyrie Irving and hit a big three late in that fourth quarter too. So it just like all the young guys, like you mentioned, man. It's Sam Presti said it. He wanted it to be an arrival and not an appearance in the playoffs. And like you said, Alan, that one really did feel like an arrival.
Yeah, I will be a slight hater. Obviously, it's my role. I'm a much more of a Dallas sports hater than Oklahoma City Thunder hater. So, to me, it felt like, especially the end of that game, kind of felt like the college football playoff. All three of the games where both teams at the end were both kind of trying to give it away. Thunder had it kind of wrapped up, and then they fucked around for a second and opened the door right back up for the Mavs, who then themselves re-choked again. I mean, it was that both teams on the end of that was a bit of a fumbling around, but it's good Oklahoma City pulled that off because as a young team that gives you some advantage and stuff, and it's good for that coach to actually outcoach Jason Kidd. I was starting to think maybe there was a coaching mismatch there for a second with the Mavs kind of winning those two games, 2 and 3. But it's good for Oklahoma City to get that tied up, and now it's a 3-game series. For a 3-game series, Matt, I always thought it was going to be Thunder in 6. That's what I had it. But I had Luka having a game, then Kyrie having a game. Neither of them have had a game yet.
No.
How do you feel about a 3-game series with that potential still lingering?
I like it because two of them are at home, right? I know the Thunder have lost a home game, in this series already, but I think Dallas completely changed the way they were guarding after the first game and through the Clippers series. They were switching everything, basically automatically switching every single thing. And that's fine when you're doing that against the Clippers, it's really James Harden is going to be an ISO a lot. And, you feel fine about that. You can't do that against the Thunder. They're going to take advantage of it every time you switch. They're going to get every matchup they want. They're going to cut to the back. They're so good at cutting the basket and finding those guys cutting back door. That's just not something you can do and be successful. And the Thunder blew them out by 20 in game 1 because they were switching everything automatically. And the Thunder were like, okay, cool. We're going to shoot layups and dunk it all day. So I think that was the big adjustment from them. Is like, all right, we're going to just play them straight up, have our best against their best. And, the Thunder struggled. And it helps when guys like PJ Washington can't miss from the 3-point line. That was the Thunder's game plan, is like, all right, cool. Luka and Kyrie aren't going to beat us. We're going to make someone else do it. And they were, though. They were. That's a fun game plan until they're actually beating you. So, I feel good. Two of them are at home. And, Luka hasn't had that game yet. Kyrie, I think that's the one that's crazy to me. He had the 4th most shot attempts last game.
Yeah.
Derek Jones Jr. shot the ball more than Kyrie Irving did in a playoff game. It's insane. Like, Kyrie has to get more aggressive.
Yeah, it's funny. You mentioned also earlier Luka missing that free throw late, man. That was like, I mean, for him to get that call, like that
was the ultimate basketball gods.
Yes,
Karma was coming back. He's bitching all game, every game, for every game that he's played. And he finally gets that call. And the basketball gods were like, no, we're not going to reward you for that.
Indeed. Well, it's I don't know. It's ratcheting up here in the NBA playoffs, which I always love. So should be a fun couple weeks here going ahead. But speaking of bitching, there was a lot of bitching coming from south of the Red River a week ago or 2 weeks ago, however long ago it was, when defensive tackle Dominic Williams committed to OU. Apparently, OU gave him a couple $1 million, a rocket ship. I'm not sure exactly what else, but Texas, though, sneakily, in the dead of night, what goes across the Red River border, up into Oklahoma, steals away, one of OU's defensive tackle commitments from the transport portal, and Jermayne Lole out of Louisville. Um, Guys, give me your thoughts on the impact here, Payton. What does this mean for OU?
Well, to me, what it means for OU is that they're back on the drawing board for defensive tackle depth, not for defensive tackle like overall headline talent. I think Williams obviously is going to be your number one, number two guy there pretty easily. I think Oklahoma has a good 2 deep now. With Lole, you had a really good 3 deep, and working through that. I mean, Brent Venables said after his spring game that defensive tackle depth was desperate. That doesn't mean you get one person and it's fixed. You need multiple guys there. So I would expect Oklahoma to kind of dig around and look around for some people. I've heard some names and stuff like that, but nothing too solid at that. And that's kind of pretty fluid as you're kind of at this point in time. You're digging through the junk drawer when it comes to this far into the portal season for that. What it means for Texas, though, I mean, like I want to see how. I don't know how Texas, I guess, fans and writers and stuff, how they can justify this, because Oklahoma obviously got Lole for a price, right? So what it was, you got it's Mr. It's the wrestler, the Price is Right guy. I cannot think of his name.
Oh, Ted DiBiase.
Ted DiBiase. Yeah, I mean everyone's got a price, and Oklahoma had him. Texas to do it had to go get him and give him a bigger price. How do they go around now having spouted all that you overpaid, and now coming in and getting a guy Oklahoma had and had them paying more? I guess maybe you could say they paid the same, but they don't have state income tax, so that's how you got the difference there. But to me, that's the I'm not sounding an alarm quite yet. But to me, that part's just kind of funny. I mean, it's college football, and it's the cool part about college football, I guess.
Right. It's also possible that Texas didn't have to pay him more, but could say, hey, you just recruited over you. Like, well, if you come down here, we'll get you more snaps, which if I'm a Texas fan, that isn't necessarily something that would make me feel all that great about this. I don't know. I mean, Matt, what do you think? Did they overpay?
Did Texas overpay?
Yes.
Yes, I would say yes, without even knowing what they paid. I would say yes. But that's what happens when you get desperate and you whiff on basically every defensive tackle you're going after in the portal. You got to do it. You kind of have to do it. They were hamstrung and hands tied behind their back. They had to overpay, and that's the game now. That's the transfer portal, right? You keep missing, you keep whiffing, and hey, let's try to stick it to Oklahoma in a way too. Like that's just icing on the cake for Texas fans, but it is fun seeing kind of the 180 that they're doing on Jermayne Lole specifically.
Yeah. I think that the one thing that you do have to give the Texas coaching staff credit for is kind of seizing on the opportunity here when OU landed Williams. That's necessarily going to mean fewer snaps for Lole. And, it also chips away at OU's depth at defensive tackle. Let's say, though, that Payton, let's say OU doesn't end up finding one other player to add to the roster here during the, kind of latest hours of the transfer portal. Does OU, does that kind of put the spotlight back on guys like Jaden Jackson and David Stone in your mind?
Jaden Jackson for sure. To me, it does, just because he's north of 300 already, and Oklahoma's going to need some guys who can plug some holes. Demand some double teams. Especially if you watch the spring game, he's able to stand up against the wash. Like David Stone, who I think is going to be a very good football player. Anytime I say this, I get a couple people get on to me about it. David Stone's at this point in time, a great one-on-one pass rush disruptor type guy, which are fantastic to have. But in the spring game, anytime there was a zone or a double team his way, he's kind of got pushed around, which, hey, it happens. It's like 600 pounds worth of people trying to move you. Yeah. Jackson, though, is able to kind of hold his anchor down and split a double team a little easier right now in his physical maturation. So I think this would thrust Jackson right back on that two deep, right at the top of the line for that. That would, I guess, it would concern me. But seeing how he operated in the in the spring game, I would be okay with that from a talent perspective. What I would not be okay about is, as we use a running term, if he gets a little niggle on his ankle or something, and it's like, okay, now he's got to sit down. We got to get that taped up. Okay, who's next? And then you're running down the line of some guys potentially who shouldn't be garnering as many snaps from that side of it. And that's something I've always had concerns about for Oklahoma's NIL thing. It's not that they could afford the top flight guys. They can do that. They've proven that. Like, there's been, over the last 2 weeks, a lot of YouTube content and Twitter content built around how Oklahoma is ready to play in the SEC because they went and got Williams. I think the ready to play in the SEC is you got Williams and you kept Lole. That's when you're really ready, because you have to pay both of them. You have to convince them to stay, because Oklahoma now has lost two dudes to rivals. We'll call Missouri a rival. And they lost them, in my mind, the same reason: snap count and position availability. Because like Caden Green wanted to play tackle. Oklahoma said, "You're a guard." It didn't matter how much money Oklahoma was going to give him at that point in time. Lole's like, "I want to start." And like, well, you're going to be in the rotation. It may not matter how much Oklahoma was going to pay him at that point in time to keep him on the roster from that side. So if Oklahoma loses somebody and you can kind of, at least in my mind, justify it in that pattern, I can feel a little bit better about it. But to go about your business, you need to keep those dudes on the roster regardless. I think teams are going to start paying their second deep their second and third guys much more than you would anticipate, because those are the guys who leave. And then you don't have, you don't have depth. That's like, Colorado, for example. We're trying to get all the SEO stuff. I think they're good on their front line. They're top 22, but what's their top 44? What's their top 66? That's when you start running into issues, when you start running into, the SEC.
Right. And, you mentioned the body type of Jaden Jackson. I think, to me, that's the one thing is, losing Lole, it hurts from a depth standpoint. The difference between him and Williams, obviously, though, is Williams is a one of one within the transfer portal cycle this year. I mean, between the talent and the size and the versatility. Lole, though, I mean, what if OU, that was a hypothetical if OU doesn't land anybody. But, I mean, given what Lole could provide from a, physical standpoint, isn't he kind of easier to replace? I mean, if they, landed, say, the kid from Louisiana Monroe or something like that, I mean, don't you just kind of keep it moving?
Yeah, it's easier to replace. I mean, obviously, Lole's, according to his stats, 6'2", 305. Oklahoma before this had one person of 300 pounds on the roster. Now, from my understanding, Jaden Jackson's 300 plus, David Stone's like 295. So they're getting bigger across that board. But yeah, he would have been another guy from that side. There is, I think there's a kid named, I think Brandon Lane, CFB Austin. Oklahoma is rumored to be in on as well. Teams like USC is talking to him as well. Same type of build, 6'2", 300 plus pounds. I mean, you can find somebody like that if you're purely and only looking for body type and measurables. Maybe not looking for impact, but if you're looking for measurables, I think it's replaceable, especially from a depth perspective.
Right. So, Matt, have you been paying attention to the edit game recently on Twitter?
Are we talking Hayes? Are we talking Hayes Fawcett?
I mean, in general, because there was one that I saw today that like I actually started cracking up, man. I think it's this kid Suggs. I'm not sure. He's maybe from a D2 school or FCS. I'm not sure exactly. He visited LSU and he's like, "Thanks so much for a great visit to all the coaches at LSU." And it's got all the pictures of him, and the cringy pictures in the uniform and everything. And the last thing it says is, "Not committed."
I love it. You have to say that, right? You have to, or else people are just going to take it and run with it. That's my favorite thing. Just the not committed. Enjoyed all my visits though. Here's all me in the gear, in my jersey, my uniform, everything. Not committed though. not
Yeah,
committed.
exactly.
It's so hilarious, man.
Yeah, it's like get the word out there. Make sure everybody who with the checkbook knows not committed.
Choose
You know?
choose your fighter, not committed or dropping like a top 15 schools
Yeah, yeah.
that you're looking at.
Yes. Yeah, yeah, absolutely, man. No, it's
Yeah, I see
good
this
stuff.
now. One of the pictures is him with his iPhone, showing the picture of his dog. Uh, he's there. Yeah, he looks every bit of everybody. But yeah, that's just a sad turn. LSU has overnight become the poor school somehow.
Right. Yeah. There's a whole article I have not read yet. It was in the Advocate, Louisiana, one of the Louisiana news sites about the state of LSU's NIL game. And so I don't know if I really want to dig into that or not because I don't really care that much.
Is it just weird to me, like the Brian Kelly stuff of his comments coming out that we're not in the business of buying players, right? We're not doing this and that and all that stuff. Do you think that's still like a hangover from all this stuff is still very new and coaches still feel like it's very taboo to like just say that they're paying players? And so I feel like that they feel like they have to still say that. Like, you don't. We all know what's happening. We all know NIL is a thing. You don't have to just like be like, oh, well, we're not paying these players. Like, dude, it's legal now. You can do that. You can say it.
I think these coaches, like Brent, has said things in a very, very similar nature about like, hey, we're not going to do it. But but what he means is like, we're not bringing people in who are only here for money, and that's lines 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Like, we're bringing in people who want to be part of the program, want to be part of the culture, and we're going to pay them market value, or maybe above market value if they're a premium position. Like, that's just understanding that you're in a market, right? Of course we have to pay you because that's what you're worth, but we want you to come here because we want you to come here. Like, that's what, like the Williams thing is like. My assumption, because the number that everyone says is like 1.2 million. Oklahoma did not pay 1.2 million. My assumption is that that's what Williams told LSU in Texas. That's what's going to take him to not go to OU. And they're like, we just won't do that. And then Williams got what he got from Oklahoma, which was not that number, and he got to go to the school he wanted to go to. His agent was doing what his agent was supposed to do. So that's why that number is so emboldened by LSU and Texas fans, because that's the number they got told. Because I don't want to go there, but if you're going to give me a ton of money, yeah, sure, I'll do it for a year. I think that's where that's coming from. But Brent always mentions like, hey, build from the culture. We're going to bring people in. It's not just about the money, but you got to pay them. I think what Brian Kelly is having to do is that maybe the structure is not built out right, but I do think some of these coaches are having to kind of balance between there are a certain section of fan bases who I'm assuming sign checks to these schools who aren't all that cool with some of these players being paid, this way, and that he has to kind of service them publicly, as well as try to build a team out using NIL and like that as well publicly, if that kind of makes sense. It's political. It's just political. You have to do double speak when you're in these positions.
See, to me, what I read that as is like, if you say, oh man, this guy's all about the money, the implication there is like he's going to be a locker room cancer. He's not in it. He's only in for, he's going to be a paycheck player. Like, it's not the kind of guy we want around our program, right? And so when Kelly says something like that, like, yeah, I mean, I actually got back and forth with Andy Staples on Twitter about this because he's like, Kelly can't say that we're doing it the right way, blah, blah, blah anymore and expect like that's going to resonate with LSU fans. I mean, it's LSU for Christ's sake, but like so yeah, I don't think anybody there at LSU is worried about, doing it the right way. But like when you do say like this kid is not about it for us, he's a there's an implication there that he's a low character guy or just in it for the money. Like that kind of message plays really well with fans. Trust me. Like, because Andy was like, oh, I mean, the LSU fans are savvy. I was like, I bet you if you look at the response that's getting on Twitter, there's going to be a ton of people. And like even like LSU fans, I don't know, or people I've never heard of came up in my mentions like, you guys, he wanted $1.2 million, and it's like, okay, he wanted 1.2 million. How much did he really get? You know what I mean? Like, I'm gonna ask you for as much as I can too. I want $1.2 million, but from through the keyhole. But you guys aren't gonna pay me that, right? So I'm still here. But
It was close to
no,
that for Allen. It was close to that.
I held out, but it's like looking at it from that perspective, like that's just a very popular way, I think, for coaches to come out there, and kind of do that. I read very similar things on numerous Texas sites about Dominic Williams also, that, it's okay for players to ask for money, but it shouldn't be the first thing. And it's like he was negotiating with you at the absolute last moment. Like that was the last thing apparently. Like, so how is it the first thing that's on his agenda? Like that all of that just, you know, I don't know, man. Kind of just like slamming these kids that way without actually doing it to me. It's just nasty, man. I don't go for it.
Yeah, LSU fans, like I can somewhat vibe with it. It's kind of, I mean, they're recruiting really well. The high school recruiting, they're number 3 in the nation right now, number 1 in the SEC. Oklahoma's number 2 in the SEC. What? Really doing well. The defensive line class for them is very good. Maybe, hey, they've just decided to allocate their money towards high school. Brian Kelly's like, hey, that's the quote unquote the right way. And I think if you put truth serum inside Brent Venables, he'd say that's the right way too. And Alan, you and I both kind of mentioned that, your high school preps needs to be the lifeblood. Your portal stuff, NIL stuff could be like your top tier premium positions of proving people to get you over the hump of something. But yeah, you're right. I mean, LSU, Brian Kelly takes LSU knowing he's going to get fired. You know what I'm saying? You don't retire from that job. It churns you out pretty quickly from that side of it. But the Texas fans, that's the part I have a harder time when they're like, man, I don't know. You look at it, look at Williams. He's asking for money. And it's like, you guys are bragging about your quarterbacks getting Lamborghinis and stuff. Like it's the only thing you guys talk about is how much money your players are making. The Pancake Factory or whatever it was. It's like and now someone says, hey, I want some of that money, and they're like, well, I don't know. And that's it's like, oh man, I can't. No, I do declare. No, thank you. It's just kind of wild to me from that side of it, of being in that perspective. If you're going to tell me an LSU fan's being nasty online, yeah, sure. sounds about right. But for a Texas fan to try to work their way through that of saying Oklahoma, maybe they overpaid somebody, it just doesn't seem to make sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, one thing that would absolutely help LSU's recruiting and any of the schools that we mentioned is a big season in 2024 this fall. And we've got some new, fresh win totals out from Circa Sports. Have you guys ever been to the Circa in Vegas since they opened it?
I haven't.
No.
It has this like outdoor pool on it. I forget exactly what they call it, but I mean, and it's like got this. It's like an enormous stadium, and they've got like big screens up everywhere. It's something like if you ever do get a chance, and it's kind of become like the marquee sports book in Vegas. So, when Circa puts stuff out, everybody pays attention, right? Well, looking at this,
and I'm assuming you've got like the comped rooms, and you walk on, you're like, oh, it's Mr. Kenney, it's Mr. Kenney, come this way, Mr. Kenney.
Yeah. I'm in my dreams, man. Hardly. No, man, I I was the guy that like got up there, like, snuck around the back and, was kind of like looking over the fence more like, and then actually being in there. But looking at it, my first takeaway when I look at this is that, man, it's just more evidence that OU's schedule is rough. Man, I mean, look at these win totals. So look at the teams that are on OU schedule. You got Bama at 9.5. You've got Auburn at 7.5. You've got what would be the next one up here? I think it would be LSU at 9. You've got this is just inside the SEC. You got Mizzou at 9. Also, you've
Tennessee
got
at 9.
Tennessee at 9. You've got Ole Miss at 9.5. You've got Texas at 10.5. I mean, South Carolina, that's
Yeah,
supposed to
even
be the
South
break. Yeah,
Carolina at
5.5.
5.5. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, like this is I'd love to see how, like, if all of them hit based on, you know, here, if like how that would compare in terms of, schedule for one team in one year versus, past seasons, how they played out. Because, the first time I went through, I think I did this with MGM. I mean, OU had, their opponents that were, slated to win something like 71 games in the season, which is, say, if you do the math on that, that's basically saying they're going to average a 9-3 year. Like, that's wild, man.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, Oklahoma. I think Bill Connolly put it out earlier in the offseason. Oklahoma is like the 7th strongest schedule at this point in time. It's just proof. I mean, Oklahoma was for that fleeting second where DraftKings had them at 6.5, and now everyone's just kind of pretty much isolated them at 7.5 at the win total. And I don't see any weird little numbers next to them. Does that mean there's not like a?
I'm assuming that means they're not taking bets on them because there's no odds at the. Why they're not, I don't know, but that's what my assumption is.
That is pretty interesting from that side of it. But no, I mean, Oklahoma, yeah, I mean, it's just Oklahoma's playing a lot of damn good teams. I guess that's the part of it. And like, if in some of this stuff, even the teams, I'm sitting there saying, oh yeah, that's an automatic win. I mean, South Carolina's sitting at 5.5 in a league where everyone's projected to win basically 8 to 9 games.
Yeah,
that's tough. I mean, that's tough from that side of it. So, I mean, it proves that it's just a different league. It's going to be a different experience for Oklahoma fans. Now, that being said, I don't know if you guys saw some of the stuff I retweeted. That SEC podcast, Mike, the SEC podcast guy, he's been on the podcast before over us on the Patreon side. He's put out something saying he has OU going 9-3, and that being enough to get him into the playoffs. Just talking about the murderer's row of the SEC at that point in time. And I think 9-3 is a number, is a season I think Oklahoma fans could kind of look at and see that as a success against this type of schedule. But that would be overachieving the over under by a game and a half, which might be pretty steep for Oklahoma at the end of the day.
Yeah. Does anything, stand out to you, Matt? I mean, like just looking at these numbers.
Man, yeah, 7.5 is tough to look at. It really is. But I mean, I think especially taking into account just how much they return on defense and the fact that they got, a Dominic Williams there on defense. I think that just really shows me that, one, obviously, like we're talking about, the schedule is just going to be tough. And then two, they're just not buying into what OU's got going on offensively, I think, because I think defensively, man, I'm expecting another pretty healthy jump from this group with everybody that's returning, another year in the system. I'll go ahead and bite the cheese, drink the Kool-Aid on the defense, right? I'll go ahead and do that. And if I look dumb later, that's fine by me, but they just have too many guys returning and too many good ones. In my opinion, for that. But guys, also the thing that stuck out to me today, because we went over these a little bit today on the show, and Texas and Georgia have the exact same over-under.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry. Texas is not as good as Georgia. Like, can we just be honest? I know that has to do with like the schedule, who's on the schedule, all that stuff. But them having the same win total as Georgia, I am not buying it at all. I think this is setting up for, I've said this on our show. I'll say it here. I think Texas beats Michigan by double digits up in Ann Arbor. I think they absolutely take it to them because Texas, for whatever reason, performs very well in their non-conference, like big-time matchups. Like the year that LSU smoked everybody, they played great at Texas. Well, as well as you could. Their defense gave up a lot of points, but everyone's defense did to Joe Burrow and that crew. They were just so good. But Texas, I mean, think back all the way to, what was it, Shane Buechele, and they put it on Notre Dame earlier in the year. Like, Texas has a good history of playing well in a big time matchup early in the season. right? Early non-conference games. So I think that, but it's setting up for a letdown, I think, to me.
Yeah, I mean, if you look too at the odds there, Texas is at 10.5, but it's minus 150 to the under. That's essentially like, saying this is the most likely outcome of any of these on the board.
And like we've made a lot on here, and I think rightfully so. I mean, Payton, one of your big concerns has been, and always has been throughout this offseason, the interior of the defensive line for Oklahoma, and rightfully so. Texas just put their best two guys in the draft, and their other guy is not there anymore. Was it Collins? Was that Alfred Collins?
Mm-hmm.
I think he's still there. Yeah,
is he? He's still there. Oh my god, that's like his
issue with
seventh
him
year.
is that yes, I believe he's a fifth-year senior. I believe, former five-star. Usually, if it's a five-star player, they shouldn't be there for 5 years.
Right. But that's what I'm saying. Is like, and
that's just an issue.
And they're not replacing just anybody. Like Byron Murphy was a first-round pick. Tavondre Sweat won every like postseason award that you could win as a defensive lineman. Like, I don't know. I'm sorry. Call me skeptical. Like, I'm skeptical of OU's defensive line, like for sure. But I don't know how Texas isn't getting that same deal. And also, their pass rush was kind of non-existent outside of Murphy and Murphy and Sweat. Like the edge players. I know they got the guy from UTSA. Did they get a guy from Purdue too? No, that he went to A&M. Never mind. I was thinking about the other guy. But I'm sorry. Call me skeptical of the defense of Texas. I know the corners are going to be really good. They got Jabbar Muhammad from Washington, so their corners are going to be fine. I'm just very, very skeptical of that defensive line.
Yeah, and it's such a soft schedule too. But go ahead. Sorry, go ahead, Payton.
I was going to say, who else is pretty skeptical about that? Joey Hickey from Longhorns Wire, had him on the Patreon podcast. He talked about that. He's like, if you look at Pete K's defenses, those corners play off quite a bit, and it puts a lot of stress on the defensive line to handle everything in front of them. And if all of a sudden you don't have two NFL defensive tackles, they're 330 plus each or whatever, sitting in the middle of the line, that just changes so much. It's like the Seth Curry thing, the geometry of the football field. Now all of a sudden that becomes an option. It's like Oklahoma was able to move the ball on Texas because they just didn't run at those guys. They ran off to the edges and it worked. Now, if that becomes an option, Texas returns a lot. They have a lot of talent. Their secondary does have stuff there. There's some depth issues there as well. But I'm guessing you're hoping, if you're a Texas fan, you look at this schedule and you say it's a 3-game season. It's Michigan, it's Oklahoma, it's Georgia. You play well in those games, win 2 out of 3 of those games. Rely on the offense, which you should. You have the numbers. You have a star quarterback. You have multiple wide receivers who are fast and strong and big, and you should be able to outscore everybody. You got Sark, who's great, and that's what you're kind of leaning on. It is not an SEC style. I even hate being that way already. It's not an SEC style built roster to potentially sustain, because if the quarterback has an off game, I don't think Texas has another way of winning as currently it's built and as currently as I see how it could play out. Obviously, that will change once they actually do something. But even then, I say it's a 3-game season. It's really a 4-game season. Something tells me that Texas A&M game in College Station is going to matter quite a bit at the end of the season, no matter what.
Yeah, that was the one I wanted to quickly correct you on there, because I have a feeling. I mean, Elko's a good coach. The roster is still fairly talented. That's going to be a tough game for them. But one thing I do want to bring up, because I was actually listening to a Split Zone Duo last week, and they did their show talking about, like, they had like 10, 11 teams. They're like, okay, I feel pretty confident saying this about this team, or this is my read on this team. And the last one they did, I think, was Oklahoma. And Richard Johnson was like, I just think that this program is going to have a real rude awakening. And, like, it's, I mean, we think that a lot of these teams just keep being good just because they are. And, like, Oklahoma doesn't have to be a good program going forward. And, like, the thing, it was kind of one of those things though, again, where I was like, how do you look at this win total and not be like, yeah, it's going to be hard. Like we all get it. Like OU's joining the SEC to level up. Like that's the point of all of this. Like it's not going to be the OU that you knew that was a very successful program, won a lot. I mean, this is about raising the bar and raising your resources, your brand, all of that. And I hate using those kinds of like the brand corporate speak or whatever, but it's true. Like that's what OU's going for now. I mean, and this like shows like, okay, this is about like as tough of a baptism that you can get into the league in the first year. Like everybody gets it. Yeah, it's going to be tough. That's the point. I mean, like it's just one of these things. Like I've heard it over and over and over, and it's just like, no, I get it. Everybody does. Am I wrong here?
No, you're not wrong. And to be honest with you, the split duo crowd isn't wrong either. But I think they are wrong in this specific case when it comes to Oklahoma. Yeah, there is right. Nothing says these teams have to be good forever. But no one points at Ohio State and no one points at Alabama and says like, well, I guess they're just not going to be good anymore. It's like, it just doesn't make any sense to me. Oklahoma is Oklahoma. Oklahoma has done this through multiple conferences. If you look at their history, they've cheated with the best of them. They've out-cheated multiple programs to do this stuff. I mean, Barry fucking Switzer ran the college football world for a while. I mean, it happens. I mean, Oklahoma is good. Now, will Oklahoma ever be as good as they were with Bud and with Barry, and where they were the top dog in college football? No. I mean, I just don't think that's going to happen from that perspective. If you look how some of these other SEC teams have arisen, from that side, it becomes very difficult. Could they be early Bob Stoops, where it's like, and again, I feel weird because hey, Brady's not here. I can say it. Early Bob Stoops, what did he play in? 4 national championships in the first 8 seasons? I mean, that's amazing. If Oklahoma were to go back to that, but that's even before like the playoffs, and then Lincoln Riley obviously the playoff appearances. But could you imagine OU in the next 8 years playing in half of the national championship games? That's the stuff you say about Alabama, you say about Georgia. So I think Oklahoma can get back to that Bob Stoopsian level. Where they're always in the mix, they're always right there, they're always in the top 5, and if a couple of things break their way, they're going to get in there and then show out, hopefully win more than just 25% of those games to pat ourselves on the back a little bit. But I would honestly, and I'll pitch this back to you guys. I want to rant on it for a second. I would much so rather this be the course of action, because I think it's 2 years of this schedule, right? But they're just going to flip them. Oklahoma is going to play the toughest schedule 2 years in a row. They're playing the good teams. They miss Georgia, obviously. They don't get them. But they potentially will in a playoff or an SEC title game, from that perspective. I would rather that than it be what's happening at Texas or what happened for Missouri, right? Like Missouri comes in, wins the SEC twice immediately because SEC East was garbage. And now their program just can't get off, can't get out of first gear. Obviously, it seems like they may be good next year, but it took them another 10 years, to get back to that level of winning a division, not just a conference, a division, and the SEC has kind of laid it out for Texas, and it's like, here you go. I think Oklahoma honestly needs to get punched in the face. Because they want to. I mean, Oklahoma wants to. They're like, we do not want to be the complete foundation of an entire conference anymore. Like, we do not want to sit there and, Oklahoma was making Kansas State money, was making Iowa State money, was making, printing money for those teams. Oklahoma said, we don't just want to do that anymore. We want to be part of something that's a much larger, and I hate it too, brand, where other helmets can come in and be big time things, where it's not just where everyone's Super Bowl and everyone just like waves away other games. Because if they go 1-11, but their one win is against Oklahoma, it's success. Now Oklahoma has an ability to be a counterpuncher. They have the ability to be the hunter, from that side. They're not always having to be the hunted. I think that will be good for the program. What will also be good for the program is for Oklahoma fans to see Oklahoma get pushed around a little bit by playing this harder schedule for 2 years in a row, and realize the amount of investment they may need, or what Norman may need to do by passing the bill to get this arena built for basketball, things like that. Because Alan, you mentioned it during the playoffs. If Texas had gone to the national championship, my assumption is the NIL stuff in Oklahoma would be a little bit bigger. It's like when you are forced to adapt, you either adapt or die. Oklahoma has always adapted. You'd have to, if you're one of those guys, you'd have to sit there and say, this will be the first time in its history where Oklahoma decided it will not adapt to the present of college football. I don't think that's reality for Oklahoma program, because I'm going to still quote from Bomani on your old podcast, or maybe you talking to him on your old podcast. Oklahoma has a lot of want to and a lot of need to be good. That matters. Oklahoma doesn't expect to be good. I think maybe that's where their interactions with college football fans on Twitter is twisting their minds. Oklahoma doesn't expect to be good. Oklahoma absolutely needs to be good, and that's the difference in my mind.
Yeah. I think you nailed it right there. When people are like, "Oh, OU doesn't have to be good," you're right, but they kind of do. Like you're right that the nothing's written in stone, but the institutional will always be backing that kind of endeavor. So
Nebraska is getting their asses kicked, and they're still selling the place out. How are you supposed to get better? How are you supposed to get better if the checks keep clearing? A little bit in my mind, I'm a little bit like, go Cortez, burn the ships. We're here now. We have to do this. Nebraska fans love them to death. Potentially could be putting their own program behind. You need to put pressure on stuff. If Oklahoma goes 8-4 2 years in a row, damn straight, Brent Venables is going to have a lot more heat on him. He's going to have to get something done. It's not. That's as much as we just. I'm heated about this for some reason. Much as we were kind of teasing about LSU fans or whatever. You know what? It produces results every 3 to 4 years.
Absolutely.
It does.
Absolutely. So last question about these win totals, Matt, looking at it, OU's at 7.5. Let's say is there one game on the schedule that you think could make or break, like tilt OU from, between 7 to 8? If you had to pick one, what's the one you'd be looking at?
Oh man. Honestly, like just knee-jerk reaction, I think it's the first SEC game. At home.
Tennessee,
At home, Tennessee. I think that kind of sets the bar. If you drop that first one, your first game as a member of the Southeastern Conference in the conference, I think that kind of sets up for it, because then you got to turn right back around and play at Jordan-Hare in Auburn.
Yeah.
And that's not going to be an easy game by any means. And then you get the Cotton Bowl the next week. So there are no breaks right there. You technically do get a bye week before Texas, but that's what I mean. I think you got to set it right from the jump. Being like, hey, we're Oklahoma. This is what we do. We're ready for all the smoke. And yeah, I really do think it's that one, to be honest with you, because like Alabama and LSU, I got no I got nothing. Like I got no expectations heading into Death Valley or hosting Alabama. Ole Miss maybe at the Grove maybe, but as far as like actually for games that you should win, right? We were just talking about South Carolina, like that one kind of sticks out to me too. Just like you're gonna have to win that game 1,000%.
Right. Yeah. Those first two SEC games where, OU's a small favorite under a touchdown, like those are the two. If they can get those two, I think they've got a shot to have, 8 or 9 wins. If they don't, if even losing one gets pretty tight. So Yeah, that's kind of where I'm leaning to.
To
All
me, I'll
right.
jump in real fast.
Yeah.
To me, it's the Auburn game. Well, like 1,000% it's the Auburn game.
Yeah.
They also are at 7.5 as well. You're gonna have to beat a team that's evenly, matched to a certain degree. To me, it's the Auburn game because Tennessee is going to be weird. Now,
Yeah, it will,
my
won't it?
understanding, Oklahoma's not going to do anything, but still, when they're doing the TV packages, they're going to have a sit down with Josh. They're going to ask him about Oklahoma, and they're going to have a sit down with Brent. They're going to ask him about what it was like being on the staff, with Josh. I mean, they're going to ask all these questions, and it's going to be weird. And even if Oklahoma's not going to like spray paint "Thank you, Josh" on the field or something, it's still going to be weird. And then right after that, I mean, sandwiched in between. Obviously, a Texas game is always weird. So I think Auburn being sandwiched in between two emotional games, you got to win that one. Like that's the one. It's like we have to stay cool. We got to stay even. We have to figure this out because if you lose Tennessee and you're all weird about it, and then then you immediately start looking ahead to Texas. It's weird that Auburn being put there is just a tough spot for Oklahoma because it's not like a down game. You would have something like right there.
And weird shit happens at Auburn. That's
as well. So it's just a weird 3-game stretch for Oklahoma specifically. But to me, I think Auburn is the one you got to go. Is kind of the indicator.
Yeah, and you wonder what that game's going to be like for Auburn too, because they have Alabama, A&M, Cal, New Mexico, Arkansas, all at home, and then OU, and then the week after they're going to Georgia. So, you kind of wonder. I mean, Hugh Freeze is a fairly skilled politician, when it comes to this kind of stuff. I mean, he might be looking at that and saying, well, Georgia next week at Georgia, we got no shot there. But, maybe they put a lot of stock into being OU and trying to gain some momentum that way.
See,
too,
that's where I disagree with the OU not being the hunted and being everybody's Super Bowl. These first couple of years, man, OU is going to get everybody's best shot. They're just going to want to beat the hell out of Oklahoma and Texas, for that matter. I mean, no, you're not an SEC team, right? I mean, if we look back, like you mentioned earlier, Payton, of Missouri whenever they joined and Texas A&M, the SEC East was horrible. Like you mentioned, they were just so bad. So Missouri got to the SEC title game 2 years in a row because everyone that they played was horrible. And then they would just get smoked in the SEC championship game. Texas A&M had a guy named Johnny Manziel too, so that helps your case, right? So is something like that going to occur? I mean, there's no SEC West and East now, so that's not going to happen. Like where OU gets a softer schedule for 2 years or anything like that. And who knows? Maybe Jackson Arnold is Johnny Manziel, but we won't know that. Yeah, it's weird to think about, but I do still think everyone's going to want to put it on OU and Texas.
Yeah, I didn't realize Oklahoma was in that position twice, where the next team they play is Georgia.
Yeah,
Auburn and then Texas as well. Because I had Joey Hickey on the Patreon podcast. Go subscribe to us, help us out. You can listen to it. I mentioned that to him. I was like, how is Texas going to handle playing Oklahoma, Georgia back to back? And he just said, hey, you have to expect Texas to be a very good football team. I expect them to go 11-1. You cannot lose Oklahoma twice. He's like, you cannot. Like, you punt Georgia, and then you play Georgia again in an SEC championship game. Like that's where their mindset is. It's like if you lose one of those 2 games, lose the Georgia game. You have to. Is there like Sark has to beat Oklahoma, and that's kind of weird to think they're already kind of in that mode. Because I think you see the recruiting, you see them winning battles, and it's like you have to beat them. You cannot let them get a foothold. Right here. That part's kind of interesting, and I think the Auburn things. I didn't think about that. That they're probably thinking, beat Oklahoma. We're not beating Georgia.
Yeah, no, that was funny because that part really stuck out to me too from that episode when he said that about like Sark can't afford to lose again. But you start thinking about it, and I guess it starts to make more sense, right? You'd be like 1-3 at that point against OU. Like that's not.
You get 1-3, then it's Jackson Arnold. In 25, Jackson Arnold's like is the guy. It's like you could all of a sudden look at 1-4, 1-5 pretty quickly.
But they get Arch Manning.
Guys don't last around.
They get Arch Manning. You didn't take that into account. Okay,
I forgot.
So, Arch Manning, though, the guy who's keeping the seat warm for him there in Texas, Quinn Ewers, one of the NCAA College Football 25 cover boys, the game from EA Sports is coming back this year. Apparently, whatever's been leaked, or is this is no, pardon me.
No, it's announced.
It's announced. Yeah, this was on the PlayStation Store already. Quinn Ewers is like, one of the front center dudes. Ironically, there's Donovan Edwards and there's Dylan Edwards. It's Donovan that's at Michigan, right?
Donovan, yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Who
And
should
he-
not been the Michigan player on the
I was gonna say he carried the ball. He carried the ball like 30 times last year. Somehow made it on here. Travis Hunter, Jalen Milrow. You can see Quinshon Judkins here, who transferred to Ohio State. So that's kind of weird.
and potentially won't be the starter.
Yeah, right. And then Carson Beck. I don't know. So it's funny. Again, we've talked a lot about Texas on this show, but
We're obsessed.
I keep hearing the number of times everybody when they talk about Texas, I hear over and over like, oh, they're really good. They're like, and then there's Quinn Ewers, and a lot of people are really high on him, but I've got some questions. I'm not so much, and it's like when everybody starts saying that, it's kind of like being so underrated, you're overrated, or you know what I mean?
Mhm.
Like, it's just very funny to me how like Ewers really is perceived, because it seems like there are so many people who he's getting star billing, but you've got everybody who's not, trying to sell subscriptions to Texas fans saying like, I'm not sure about this dude. I mean, it's very funny. I mean, like, did you guys expect Ewers to be on the cover?
No, not at all. Because I cannot remember the guy on I think it's Matt something on Twitter who's been doing the FOIA stuff.
Yeah, Matt
for
Brown.
this.
Yeah.
Matt Brown. Yeah, and he had kind of said, okay, here's the rules that they said. It's going to be one position, one guy per conference. Obviously, that didn't happen at all because there's 3 SEC quarterbacks on there,
Right. Yeah.
and 2 Big Ten running backs. So I was thinking, okay, if you're going to do a quarterback, then you're going to do Sanders. And then, then it's kind of broken. Then I kind of broke it down from that perspective. So in no way, shape, and form did I do that. And in the Solid Verbal, who we stole the idea from, they're like, yeah, it's going to be Beck. If you're going to put an SEC quarterback on there, you're putting Beck on there. But my assumption is Sanders said, yeah, we'll do that for $500,000. And then Manning's were probably the same way. Like, no.
No. Arch is not participating.
That's true, but my assumption is they said we're not participating because our brand value is too high to be used on your game in that way. But no, it's surprising, and there's some guys on there that didn't make it on there. I know we're going to talk about Oklahoma's other, at least in the rearview mirror rival. Ollie Gordon not being on there to me is a sham. I mean, he needs to have been on there. He will be running the football quite a bit next year.
Yeah, but like, I mean, I'm looking at the teams that are front and center here. It's like USC, Notre Dame, Texas, Alabama, Michigan, Georgia. Well, Colorado because of Travis Hunter, Ohio State. I can see OU in the corner.
You get OU, yeah. You get
putting Oklahoma State among that group just doesn't seem just something seems off about that, and that's you're really not a shot at OSU, I promise. But lastly, the last thing about this game, it just reminds me, you guys probably don't remember this, but back when Charlie Strong was still coaching at Louisville, like some game came out in the middle of the season, and I remember it was because of what he said, and he blamed like a loss on his players spending all week playing the game. I remember now it was Call of Duty something. I don't know. But he was like, oh, they had a call to duty. All right. They were supposed to be, getting ready. And like, I just remember that part cracked me up. But, this comes out in the summer. So like, hopefully all the players will have their minds right by the time the season starts. So, but that kind of covers like everything we had hoped to get to. Is there anything that we missed?
I don't think so.
Not that I can see.
All right, fellas. Well, thanks again to our sponsor, Vanessa House. And like we said at the beginning of the show, make sure to rate, review, and subscribe wherever it is that you get your podcast. Hit us up with that 5-star review. We need some feedback too. Tell us what you like, what you don't like on there. And also, check out the free website at keyholepod.com. You can also access our Patreon through there if you want to support the work that we're doing here. But that kind of, I think, wraps it up. So, for Brady, who was not able to join us tonight, for Matt, for Payton, I guess that's it. I feel like I'm forgetting something.
Sooner.